Welcome again to Full Circle. Going to talk about more Circle stuff. So last time we went over a few entries. This time we have a new release I want to talk about, and then we'll talk about a few more entries. WTC is coming up this weekend, so there's a lot of information out there on WTC lists. I may talk about that next week. I'd rather see how they do before I'm making predictions that I'm totally off base about. So first, today actually, let's see if I can get this on the camera. The Druid Mist Riders released. Little goats. I don't know if this will focus, but pretty cool models. Focus. Too close. Anyway, didn't really set this up to do that well on this. I'm sure you can find pictures of these elsewhere. Obviously, mine aren't painted yet. Hopefully they will be soon, courtesy of Griffin's Roost Painting. And when they are, I'll bring them out, and we'll probably have a little more talk about them. I'll have played them a little bit. They're pretty cool models. They're the PVC plastic that Privateer's done for a lot of things. So more mold lines than some things, but they go together easier. So sort of a trade-off, and they're cheaper, a little lighter in my bag. Don't have a whole lot to say about those. Excited to see where to try them out. I have some list ideas with them. Chromac 2, Balder 1, possibly either of the Krugers. Morvana 2 is not a bad place to maybe give them a test out also. So we'll see. I don't have a whole lot to talk about with those just yet. But moving on, a model they synergize pretty well with, actually. It's the first one we'll talk about. And it's also the biggest one we'll talk about, the Woldwrath. I love this model. I was very excited how it came out. And pretty excited for the changes. So anybody who played Mark II is pretty familiar with its rules. It didn't change a ton, but it did change in some pretty meaningful ways. So to start with, same profile as far as stats. It's still speed 5. So all the gargantuan rules, still construct, still fury 4, still 2 POW 19 2-inch melee with the rule, the Earthshaker, the rule that when you hit a model in melee with the fist, but it is optional now. It used to not be optional. You knock everything down in a 4-inch centered on the model hit. Animus is the same, Druid's Wrath. 10 inches from it, any enemy model targeted by a spell from a friendly faction model will get an additional die on the attack roll. Significant changes though. Stayed armor 20, but it traded Spell Ward for Sacred Ward, which is huge. So now we have a bunch of buffs, mostly armor buffs, but a few other offensive buffs, making it more accurate to hit. Could be pretty relevant. We do have I think we have 1 damage buff as of right now that it's relevant for, and those sort of things. But that change is pretty big, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. It also gained hyper regeneration, so it heals D3 damage on its own. Pretty important if you're going to bring it with anybody other than a Balder, because that can help keep it steady. Still has 58 boxes, mostly in the body being the largest spiral. And the other major change is its gun got, in my opinion, a lot better. So it's at the base, it's still range 14, power 15, which is obviously a very good gun. Rat 5, no change there. But instead of doing the weird thing that it used to do, where it would do an Electro Leap, but the Electro Leap would drop a 3-inch lightning hazard. They're called hazards now. That would do a POW 10 if you entered or ended in it. Now it's just an AoE 5, and it's the same power, so everything in it takes POW 8 blast damage, and then it leaves the lightning hazard, or sort of a Scather, if you're familiar with that from other factions, that does POW 10 if you interact in it. So you might have blocked off more space with the 2-3 inchers before, but I think getting the blast damage and just a 5-inch pie plate is actually pretty significant on the table. So I think honestly you could test out Woldwrath in a lot of places. I've tried it with Baldur 1 and Baldur 2 so far, and I liked it quite a bit in both. I think if you're bringing it, part of your game plan is probably going to be you want to use its gun early, you want to use the rest of your army to try to sort of get rid of as many of the things that can threaten it as possible, and at the same time keeping it standing. So I usually think you're going to want at least the unit of shifting stones, or the Blacklight Stone Shapers, which just came out, which can repair at D3, or I'm sorry, D6. Shifting stones can obviously repair it. Either Baldur can make sure that its relevant aspects are up at least, but you're probably not going to heal more than like 1 or 2 points in a turn with it. Pardon me. And both Baldurs have those aforementioned armor buffs that I was talking about, so that makes them a pretty good place to start thinking about this. Stone Skin, you whether it starts on the Woldwrath or not will sort of depend on the army you're facing. You may want it on some of your other infantry early and then sort of trade it over to that when it goes in, or if you know they might be trying to put shots into it, you're going to want to get that armor buff up there a lot sooner. The Baldur 2 list I played, I had Shield Guards included in the first build, so I tried it with a couple of Wold Guardians, and that was nice to sort of spread the damage out and in one match keep Grievous Wounds off of it, which might be something that we continue to experiment with. It'd be nice to get some more Shield Guards to be able to do that with, but I think Morvana 1 would be a great place to try it out. I haven't put her on the table yet in Mark 3, but when I do, pretty likely that it will include a Woldwrath, because she basically has an armor buff that you can't purify. That's about it about him. Great changes with the new edition. I'm happy to see a model of that magnitude sitting on the table. It's a really cool model for Circle to see as a centerpiece of an army, and probably will continue to get better as the edition goes on, I think, because I suspect that we will get more support for some of our Wolds and the kind of the stone part of the faction as Mark 3 continues with the way theme forces are shaping up. So may not be the first one, but I imagine that we will see more. From there, let's continue the stone theme and talk about a Mark II darling who most people don't find nearly as good. Bradigus Thorle, the Runecarver. Hopefully I said his name right. I don't have the rules out in front of me. I've gotten I've done a lot of looking at Bradigus. I've gotten one game in. This is a model. If you played in Mark II, you knew everything that he did, and he kind of still does all those things, but kind of not as good. So he was played in Theme Force a lot in Mark II. You're not going to see that in Mark III, or at least not until we actually get some Theme Forces. But just to go over his abilities real quick, he's still speed 5, Mat and Rat 6, defense 14, armor 16, fury 6, and he still has a repair for Wolds, well, a repair in general, but it works on any of the stone things in the faction, and it repairs 3 plus D3, so that's pretty much the best type of repair that's in the game right now. His gun changed from rate of fire 3 to just rate of fire D3, so no more, you're not able to just buy 3 POW 13 gunshots like you were before, but rate of fire 3 probably be okay, but might have been, it seems like they felt was a little too good going into Mark 3, So that's the reason for the change there. Otherwise, his melee attack's the same, 2-inch melee range. It's basically throwing stones at you or hitting you in melee with stones, like stones. His spell list is the biggest place that his feat didn't change at all. It still pushes you 5 inches in one direction and then back the other direction at the end of the turn. His feat or his spell list is where most of the changes happen. So synergy, this across the board is capped at a +3 bonus. So now as soon as you hit 3 things in your battle group, connect in a melee attack, everything after that is only getting +3. You can't get up to the +4 to 10, 11 theoretical. 10 I think was about as high as you could get in Mark II. Obviously it's a downgrade. I think it's still a good bonus though. +3 to hit and +3 to damage is more than any one spell will give anybody. So I think synergy is still a good spell. It needs some time to be explored a little bit more. The one thing I am disappointed with that changed here was Mystic Wards. I thought it was a really cool spell that required a lot of counterplay before, and now it's only on a single target. So before you wouldn't necessarily cast it in every game, but you could, and if you position well, you could get a lot of use out of it. Now you can put it on a single target in your battle group, and it'll lose any enemy spells that are on there will fall off, and it will prevent the spellcasting and upkeeping within 5 inches of it. So very situational spell now, in my opinion. Still going to be applicable in games, I think. You're not going to be looking to cast it in nearly as many games as you used to. You're going to use it more to keep a spell off of a relevant part of your army, maybe, or that one turn that you really need to screw up their order of activations to get them to not do something right away, or maybe you can't actually prevent it if you can keep them from killing a model by positioning and its defensive values. The other spells change. Rift, he still has Rift. No changes to Rift for this edition. Rift's a decent spell. It's a good spell to Geomancy, which is obviously pretty relevant to him since he's going to be bringing wolves, and that's one of the things they feature heavily, or at least a couple of them do. And his other spell, Battering Ram, changed from range 6 to range 8. So range 8 is sort of in the sort of distance where it's actually relevant and you might cast it, whereas range 6 made it super situational. I played Bradigus a bunch in Mark II, and I don't think I cast it more than once. That said, so while people are kind of down, and a lot of that is that the theme force isn't there, but Sentry Stones in Mark III, as I talked about in the last episode, very good. Probably something you want to consider bringing with him. Shifting Stones, which we'll talk about later at some point, again, probably still worth bringing with him, especially for Wold Guardians. They actually increase their threat by 1 inch from their charge distance. And as far as his feat, it still gives us some of the longest threat ranges in our factions. You're talking about, without any additional buffs like Hunter's Mark, for example, that you're threatening in melee from a heavy war beast, you're threatening, I believe it's 14 inches. Same for, which works also if you place the 2 speed 5 heavy wolds get to 8 inches on the charge, and then they have another inch for melee, so 9 inches there. Same works out for the Wold Guardian if you place it. And then obviously being able to slide back gives you a lot of flexibility with him on how you may want to play him. The unfortunate piece, so let's talk good stuff first. So Megalith, who we haven't talked about yet, but we will at some point. But the big change there is he's kept most of what he had. His points are still in the reasonable range, but he went up to power 17. So you're not playing theme right now, so you're not locked out of wanting to bring him. So there's virtually no reason not to play Megalith with him. He brings Geomancy. He hits his hard. He is the hardest hitting Wold that isn't the Woldwrath in the faction. You're gonna bring Megalith. I suppose there's something to be said for bringing a Woldwrath and maybe playing sort of a different type of list. I haven't tried that. I played a list with 5 heavies when I tried this out. there might be something there with Woldwrath. I'm not sure. Getting him up to being able to hit it Mat 9, POW 22 is pretty relevant, I'd say. But he doesn't take advantage of a lot of what Bradigus does, namely his feet. So I'm not sure. We'd have to see there. Yeah. The big changes though for Bradigus actually come from his army composition. So Wold Guardians are now shield guards. So 17 points for a shield guard, where before we were paying 5 in Mark II, plus you end up with a free one with the Wold Watchers, and they're really our only melee light that is made out of rocks. So it's a little tougher at 9 points, and we'll come back to talking about them. I have not been as excited about playing them without shield guards, so they're basically the exact same as Mark II except no shield guard, and I'm just not sure that that's what Bradigus is looking for. It may be. I did play the version with 5 heavies. I thought that was okay too. I was going to take advantage of using Rift when I could, as well as just being able to. Right now, the game, we're seeing more heavies on the table, so having access to POW 20 Wold Guardians or Megaliths feels pretty strong. So Bradigus is an interesting place. He doesn't excite me nearly as much as some of the other Circle casters, just because we don't have anything new to look for with him. And but I think Synergy's still good. I think Mystic Ward has a place. I think his playstyle is pretty linear, so it would be nice to get some more Wolds, really, just to sort of mix up his game a little bit. He doesn't do anything for infantry at all, so I think whatever infantry you're bringing is to support him or his battle group, or to do a very specific task, rather than in some other cases where we very specifically do have casters who support their Wolds, their infantry. So that is kind of what I have to say about Bradigus. Let's see what I was going to do next. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's shift gears here again a little bit and talk about the Shadowhorn Satry. There he is. Oh, a little small. That's better. Shadowhorn, pretty maligned actually in Mark II. I haven't seen a ton of them yet in Mark III in lists showing up. I've played it a bit. So just to go over what it does real quick. Still speed 6, defense 13, armor 17, mat 6, rat irrelevant. Fury 3 now is a change in Mark III. A lot of beasts went to be heavy war beasts went to being Fury 3 that were 4 in exchange for their presumably in exchange for their point cost also changing, or other rebalancing reasons. So he's Fury 3 now. I don't recall his threshold off the top of my head. I think it's 8. And he still has set defense, so he goes up to defense 15 against melee attacks. Still has two open fists at POW 13s each. His head weapon is POW 14, and that's still a hard head, so if he hits you with a slam or a headbutt, you're going to take the full POW 14 instead of his strength of 10. He picked up chain attack throw, which can be pretty useful. Obviously, if he hits you with his 2 fists, he can make a throw power attack against you, which is a nice change, and it makes sense. This guy's kind of all about throws. It's always been his thing. He still has bounding leap, so he can be forced to at the end of his movement, where he made a full advance, not a charge or a slam or anything like that. He can spend a fury and place himself completely within 5 inches of his current location. That's like the reason you want to play him. He's the most maneuverable on his own heavy that we have. He can threaten 12 inches by himself. He trades that obviously for he doesn't hit the hardest and he doesn't have a ton of fury when he gets there and so forth. But he can get to a lot of odd places. And then when he gets there, you've got 2 open fists. He can make a throw. So you can set this guy up safe if you're playing Chromac 2, Kaya 2 maybe, where you've got, say, 1 or 2 Shadowhorns, and then behind them you've got Getorix, Feral, Stalker, some combination of and Chromac himself in that list, where you can trade 12 points. You can put 12 points pretty far forward on your side, throw their model back, and now you're going to be able to use Getorix, say, to kill that model that's knocked down too, so super helpful to take that model out without really being in a position at all that's threatening, while they have a Shadowhorn that's over there that they have to deal with, and you have 12 points you sent over there, probably got more than 12 points back unless it's some sort of spam list. In a list like Kaya 2 or Chromac 2, you can also combo up Primal and, in Chromac's case, his feet, and in Kaya's case, not Wild Aggression, apologies, Force Evolution, and he goes up to POW 18 on his head attack, POW 17 on his other 2 attacks, and MAT 8, so, and possibly MAT 10 with Chromac, Carnage spell. There's a few other buffs. Pretty strong melee ability there too. So every once in a while, you're going to surprise somebody who's like, "Oh, this pillow-fisted Shadowhorn isn't going to be able to do anything," and then all of a sudden, they lost their 18-19 point heavy to a 12 point quote-unquote pillow-fisted Shadowhorn that they thought was out of range. So always something to watch out for on your side if you can get a trade up like that. And again, if that's the most forward thing, it's 12 points, and you probably got more than 12 points back for it, which is awesome. It did get, I sort of breezed past this, but its animus changed. You used to have an animus called Virility, which helped you throw farther. He doesn't have that anymore, and I suspect that has something to do with the throw rules changing with Mark III. But he got, I'm not even sure I'm going to pronounce it correctly. The animus he got is Puissance, I think. Puissance. The crowd here in the Full Circle house is correcting me. It gives a friendly faction war beasts, or friendly faction models, I have to look, it might be war beast, weapons beatback. So beatback's not as good as it used to be, because if it was, we would just put on a stalker every time and we would kill every model on the table. Sadly, we can't do that, but it could be very useful in lists to give you some scenario presence. So if you need to get something out of a zone and you can push it, beatback's going to be a better plan than assuming that you absolutely can kill it. The animus costs 1, range 6, just like any friendly animus. Very excited about the Shadowhorn. I need to give him a little more table time with some of those better Warbeast casters. I'd like to try him with Chromac 1. The Warpath is definitely a very good spell for him, and Wild Aggression helps him if I need to get to sort of help that MAT 6 out when you need to do that as well. It's definitely a great Warbeast. I think we definitely have time to talk about at least one more. So let's see what's out there. Let's go ahead and, yeah, we'll do that. Let's talk about another Warlock, and I would say she's probably been my favorite since I've seen her. And that is, oh, holy cow. So technical difficulty, let's go ahead and make her not cover my face up. That is Tanith the Feral Song. A brand new Warlock. She's the new Battlebox Warlock for Circle. I'm probably the umpteenth person you've heard talk about her and read about her and you've thought about her, because she's been talked about for a long time now. And until War Machine Weekend, she will be our newest Warlock, and after War Machine Weekend, I'll hopefully have some exciting new Warlock to talk about. But until then, Tanith the Feral Song. So just run down of her abilities real quick. She's Speed 6. She's Mat and Rat 6. Defense 15, Armor 15. She's got 15 boxes. She's Focus, or I keep saying Focus. She's Fury 6, and she has defensive. As far as defensive stats go, she has Prowl, which is huge. The Circle has a lot of ways to generate things for her to places for her to hide, and obviously Stealth is a very, very good ability. And then her strength really lies in her spell list. So because her feat is really about her spell list as well. So her feat is spells on her spells from friendly faction models cost 1 less to a minimum of 1, and she can channel through Warbeast in her battle group. So then, just real quick to run down her spell list, she has Bleed, which is a shitty nuke. It's range 8, POW 10, and she heals D3 if she hits with it. Cost 2. So it's basically just there. She gets a pretty cheap damage option. She also has Rift. Talked about Rift a ton. Still costs 3. Still range 8. Still POW 13. Leaves a 4-inch. 4-inch AoE. Rough terrain. Not really the exciting stuff yet. To get into the exciting stuff, she has Scything Touch, which used to be basically only a Crick spell, but now, and for Cricks, they're all kind of sad. It's where Circle, it's amazing. So it's friendly faction model gets Dark Shroud, and if you don't know, Dark Shroud makes enemy models within the melee range of whatever she puts that on, and it's just a model, not model unit, suffer -2 to their armor. So it's effectively an armor buff, but or a armor debuff, but it's even better than that, because it's not just the model with it that will be affected, it's anything else that attacks that model because of how Dark Shroud works. So putting it on various Circle things helps if you need to send, say, 2 things in on it. She then has Affliction, which used to only be seen on Fiona the Black, but now it's still range 8. It is that the model unit affected suffers -2 defense, and anytime that a damage roll fails to break armor, it automatically does 1 point of damage. So I don't care if your armor 22's Dawnguard Sentinels, which I've faced with her, you take a point of damage, dead, or tough checked, or whatever the case may be. That spell's pretty amazing, frankly. And then her final spell is Admonition. And Admonition is the same as Mark II. Target model in her battle group, so her or one of her Warbeasts. If an enemy model is within 6 inches of it, it can move 3 inches, ignoring free strikes. Absolutely amazing. Late in the game, it keeps her alive. Early in the game, it makes killing one of your Warbeasts just a pain in the ass, especially depending on the Warbeast. It potentially combos fantastically with a Gnarlhorn Satry having Counter Slam, something that's been harder to get off for us in the past because you always need to have 3 inches for that slam to happen. And in this case, you can't fail to have 3 inches for that to happen. I don't love the Mat 6 aspect of that, because a lot of times the thing you want to slam, you might end up missing, and that sucks. But Admonition's great for getting that off. It's great on a lot of things. Like any beast, frankly, that like they need to kill, having a 3-inch get out of jail free card is great. A Stalker that sprinted away, sometimes just getting that little bit extra is fantastic, and so forth. I feel like I'm missing something, but I'm pretty sure those are all of her spells. The other thing for her is she has on her gun, she has a melee weapon. It's 2-inch range. I think it's POW 10. I honestly don't know. I don't think I made a melee attack with her. It has crit Shadowbind. The relevant attack is she has a range 10, POW 12 ranged attack that ignores elevation, cover, concealment. I think that's it. Maybe one other thing. And if she directly hits the model, or she could not directly hit. If she does hit the model, it suffers Shadowbind, and it centers a 4-inch AoE on them, on her, on that model, and those are all shadowbound, so they're all going to be stuck in position. I believe if she kills the model, it's removed from play as well. Not that part doesn't come up a ton, but or it hasn't been too terribly relevant. But Shadowmine, amazing ability. So on her own, she has the potential to reduce the defense of something by 5. She can use her ranged attack, hit that, hit Affliction. You're down. One model could be, or a couple models could be down 5 on defense. Big swing. But you are reliant on starting at either a Rat 6 or Fury 6 to get it going. So a little limited, but it can really help seal the deal when you need to. At first, a lot of people looked at her and like, oh, she should be Fury 7, really, to get as much out of her as you need. And like, there was some like, well, why doesn't she let the 1-cost Animai be reduced all the way to 0? I don't, like that would be something. Frankly, I still am pretty convinced that she may be the second best warlock in this faction, which is saying something. So she stepped into a faction that had a pretty good stable, and I feel pretty comfortable saying that. So she kind of brings everything you want. She has movement. She has some help defensively with admonition. She keeps herself safe with prowl. She can debuff defense with Affliction. She helps against armor if it's widespread with Affliction. She can help against a single target with Affliction in some lists. Scything Touch obviously is going to help you crack armor. And you can build her list a ton of different ways. You can bring a lot of beasts, and she has the ability to put out 6 primals on her feet turn if she needs to. I've done that. I think I've done 5 with Scything Touch, but you get the idea. She Affliction lets you really, like, Dawnguard Sentinels are kind of the poster child for this, so that they go up to armor 17 on their own, and then they can Iron Zeal to 20, and then they can have some armor buffs up to 22, and if it's ranged attacks, they can go even higher than that. And then all of a sudden you're like Affliction, and you just kill them all in a turn. That's happened also. And it's not something that they plan on, like, that's going to be good, that defensive measure is going to be good for them against almost anything else, except something like this, where it's going to automatically do a point of damage. I mean, obviously there's like snipers and Kelbaylock and things like that, but Scything Touch means something like a Feral can get, with Primal, you've got +4 damage you can bring there. I've sort of focused on 2 different types of builds with her. One has been a little bit more infantry heavy, so I was playing, and you could do this a few different ways, but I was playing her list with Reeves of Orboros. We will find occasion to talk about them at some point in specific, but they now have the ability, a unit of Reeves can put out, theoretically, 20 with a with a command attachment, can put out 22 attacks, and with Affliction, that means, and they're Rat 5, so Affliction means they're already Rat 7, assuming they couldn't aim. Rat 7's pretty good. They can CRA, so you may get less attacks, but you might be assured that they hit, and then even though they're POW 8, depending on, again, if you CRA'd, they're going to do a point of damage, no matter what. Additionally, I brought Werewolves with them, because I felt like that was a good pairing. And you can put Scything Touch on a Werewolf, hit a model with a 11-man CRA, so it's a POW 19. That Werewolf charges in, does another POW 13 of damage, and then 2 more Werewolves charge in, and because of how Gangfighter and Scything Touch works, those 2 are boosted POW 15s, and then you can hit it again with another full CRA at POW 21 because of Dark Shroud, and you can CRA into melee because of War Tempered on the command attachment. So you would be surprised at how many heavies you've just took out of the game with probably not giving up hardly anything, and you're using 6 points of Werewolves to trade. There's no heavy that's less than 6 points, even Mad Dogs in the Karchev list that's floating around. So that's a great trade. And if those Werewolves and if you didn't kill them, those Werewolves, potentially, depending on what they had to do to get there, maybe it'll do activate and attack again. It won't be boosted, but still pretty good. Or maybe if they killed it, they can charge something else. So a lot of shenanigans you can do there. I did manage to one time kill a Stormwall from full to dead with Affliction by just making attack rolls until it died. So it's like 54, 56 hit points of damage or whatever. Definitely a fantastic way to build her. If infantry picks up more, it may be the way to build her. You can sort of balance. You could use less Reeves to one unit. The other way is to play lots of Warbeasts. So I've been playing and using your other attacks to make sure that you can, with Affliction and some other stuff, to make sure you can kill the infantry. So if I have Sentry Stones anytime I've been playing her to help keep things safe. But that putting out all those primals again, things like either spamming some of our cheap heavies or bringing things like Scarsfell's Griffins are going to be fantastic. You can put Primal in one, put Dark Shroud on either one of them or whatever else is in melee with the target. And you can trade, sometimes you can trade one Scarsfell Griffin for a heavy if you spike. It may have to be two, but at 8 points, it's as close to if you get 2/3 of a heavy out of 8 points, most of the time you're going to be doing pretty well. And then their defense 15, they have to deal with it, which is a lot of resources for them to be expending. As I mentioned, Admonition on a Whirlpool Stalker is great, on a Gnarlhorn is great, on herself's great. Feral can take advantage of it. Pureblood, I think, would be perfectly fine. I can't really think of too many things in the faction that she's just like, no, I can't make that better. I've considered almost everything that we have at one point for putting in her list. Super exciting release for us. I'm currently playing more of the like Warbeast version with her. We'll see how those do it at WTC as well. There's a few versions of that out there, and I'm pretty eager to see it. I love this release. Alright, that probably go ahead and wrap things up here. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but all the pictures you've seen so far, we'll get eventually to talking about things I don't necessarily have painted models for, and then I'll rip off the images and give Privateer Press some credit. These have all come from Griffin's Roost Painting. They're the models I get to play with, and they look awesome. So if you want any painting, go to griffinsroostpainting.com, or you can search for them on Facebook and send a message, and if you want to get something painted, they can work with you from there. And I would like to go ahead and thank anybody who listened. If you have any questions, my handle is Cheddar Caveman on basically any bit of social media you might possibly imagine, so feel free to message me on any of them, and I'll probably try to get the YouTube video of this posted tonight or tomorrow. So thanks for listening.